4 years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't.
This is one of the biggest fears I have for my future classroom. To have students that don't have basic essentials they need to be able to learn. The biggest reason I want to teach is to make a difference in my students' lives. It scares me to think about the conditions some children grow up in. It scares me to have children in my classroom that don't have a coat for winter, who haven't bathed in days, children that only get their meals at school, children who don't have a home, children who know more than I do about drugs, who know more cuss words than I do. I don't know what to do with these children. I don't know how to be a good teacher for them. I don't know how to help these children grow and learn at the highest level they can. I had the privilege of interviewing Mrs. Beck, a health education teacher here at Ball State University. This is what she's had to say about poverty in education. So what are ways poverty affects education?
So I would say poverty is one of the most significant and cross-contaminating sorts of disparities that students experience. It affects every single aspect of health, of education, of life. Poverty, from a health perspective, affects every dimension of wellness. So when we talk...
So what should future teachers know about their responsibility when it comes to children living in poverty?
Know what your school and your district's policies are about what things you can and can't do, and really become an integral part to your school's coordinated school health efforts, because poverty is definitely a situation that coordinated school health would be involved with. I think that's your first thing. But I think as a teacher, one of the most important ideas is understanding that poverty overlaps so many dimensions of your health and your wellness, and that we've often used the example of, so if they come to class and they're not had breakfast, that we give them a granola bar. That's great. That's a good first step, but that's only handling one minor part of the problem. And students that are living in poverty have so many other issues. One of the biggest things that a teacher needs to do in his or her classroom is realizing that those students need extra support in being connected to resources. So food, shelter, clothing, laundry, medical care. But something that's really important for a teacher to be aware of is that this condition of poverty really is the #1 risk factor for unintentional injuries. And so knowing that the students, we talk about dimensions of wellness and how they overlap, safety related to injury prevention is huge. And so but students who are living in poverty have a lot of needs. We talked about the dimensions of wellness. And so it can be something like they need lunch money. And that makes all the difference, or they need a snack, or they need breakfast. Just helping in that way. You know, students who come from affluent families that are involved in the lives of their children, they're coming fed, they're coming with great school supplies, they're ready to go. Students living in poverty come almost with nothing, and they need almost everything.
What are some experiences you have encountered with children living in poverty that could happen in future teachers' classrooms?
I went to a child's home once and to talk with the parent because they didn't have any other way for me to communicate with them. And when I went in, it was very dark and very cold, and the parent asked me to come sit in the kitchen so that we could talk, and I discovered that she had a candle and was for the light, and they were heating their house with the oven door open, which was natural gas, which is super dangerous. And that was the environment that my student was living in every single day. And that was the one student that I noticed, but I'm sure that that was the vast majority of my students. So another example of teachers need to be aware of students living in poverty is something that I experienced with more than half of my students, and that is it's sort of an all hands on deck approach within a family to make money to meet the basic needs. And if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you start with the very bottom, which is safety and security, food and shelter. Those are the foundational things. So if you're really struggling within a family to meet those basic needs, it really is an all hands on deck approach to making money. So young people are working, older people are working, siblings are paying for everything. But my sixth grade, seventh grade students started dating older men for the purposes of getting rent paid, or getting their nails done, or getting their new shirt, or buying a book that they needed for school. Well, what that really is prostitution. That you're having sex with your older boyfriend so that your older boyfriend will pay the rent for your mom, or put gas in the car, or get your hair done. And they didn't look at it that way, and that was the most tragic thing, I think, is that they didn't realize that. But the parents were willing to let that happen because they needed the money. And so I think teachers really just need to know that poverty is an all-encompassing condition that affects every aspect of that child's life, every dimension of the child's wellness, and every aspect of their education and learning.
After talking with Mrs. Beck and listening to her experiences, I've been able to learn about the children that may one day be in my classroom. It is still my biggest fear, but I have a better understanding of how to conquer that fear.